there was a time where I didn't really understand how important what was happening in my mind and my body was in the process of creating anything in this world. It I, I wasn't raised to be internally aware. I was raised to be externally aware. And I think most people are. And there's this, usually, if you're not raised to be internally aware, usually there's this, well, not for everybody, because there is like some people that wake up and some people that don't. And if you're listening to this, you're woke, right? You're awake, or you're waking up. The point being is when you're not internally aware, sometimes there becomes so much pressure, so much pain, so much internal suffering that you're forced to turn inwards to figure out what the hell is happening in your mind and body. And that is like that moment when you are forced, almost sometimes forced, to go inside to see what's happening in your mind and body. That is what we call waking up. But if you pay attention, most people on this planet are externally aware, and they're doing everything that they can to make sure that they don't have to face inward. They overwork, they overeat, they're hyperactive, they overdrink, they gamble, they oversex, they over everything. They just like, they're looking for, they're over entertaining themselves, watching endless hours of television. They're engaged in activity that's just for distraction and not for anything productive. And what they're really doing is they're trying to keep their attention and their awareness off of what's happening in their mind and body. And in the process of doing that, they're really relinquishing all the power, the true power that they have in this world. When I say true power, we are each very, very powerful creators in this world. We have the creative power and the creative force of God in this meat suit. And we have a supercomputer attached to our minds or into our necks. And through this mind and through this supercomputer with this meat suit, then the awareness that we are can really create and see how powerful and demonstrate and display how powerful we are. But first, it takes remembering how powerful we are. And not everybody reaches a point where they look inward to explore how powerful they are. Now, I remember back in 2016, before my awakening, and I'm air quoting awakening, before my awakening, and it was just about rearranging everything in the external world as a means of survival, as a means of trying to be okay. But I didn't know what I was trying to be okay from until I started looking in. And that's when I saw the pure chaos in my mind and the pure chaos in my body. And it's from understanding and recognizing that chaos that I got to start the process of cleansing it out and elevating it and upgrading it and expanding it and increasing it and amplifying it. And when I started doing this, that's when everything in my life started changing. And that's when I shifted from a life of obligation and a life of going someplace I didn't want to go, to do something I didn't want to do, to work for people I didn't want to work for, waking up when I didn't want to wake up, to a life where I own my own time and I call my own shots and I say yes when I want to say yes and no when I want to say no. And it truly is a life of freedom. And that is what happens when you find your true source of power and you stop leaking your power and you stop leaking your energy in the world. Now, there's this thing that is a truly creative force inside of us. And when we harness this, when we recognize it, when we finally open our eyes to it and see the power of it, we'll wonder why it hadn't been there our whole lives, and we will wonder why we weren't aware of it early on in our lives, so we could harness it and leverage it and use it, and create just more joy and create more abundance of everything in our life and create more fulfillment. And this thing, which is not really a thing, it's a concept, it's called coherence. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about coherence. And it's within coherence where we find our true power, our true authority, and our true creative ability to express what's inside of us and make it real on the outside. If you pay attention, and if you've opened your eyes to what's happening, you understand that you have a lot of thoughts every day, right? And your mind, the average human being has 120,000 thoughts per day, and most of them are not kind. And if you really pay attention, there's just a lot of noise up there in a mind that hasn't been, let's say, focused, that hasn't been disciplined, not in a punishing way, but that hasn't been focused on what exactly you want instead of what you don't want. And if you drop down about 18 inches from your mind, from your this third eye between our eyes, and you drop into your body, into your heart center, you're going to feel that there's all these emotions that are going on in your body. Sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's desire, sometimes fear, sometimes guilt, sometimes shame, sometimes joy, sometimes peace, sometimes courage, sometimes pride. But you've got all these emotions that are flowing through your body because we are emotional creatures, whether we want to admit it or acknowledge it or not. We are emotional beings. And if you don't feel, you're not really living, because we experience life. We taste life through our emotions. We create life through our emotions as well. The concept of coherence is very, very simple. It's simple, but it's not easy. And it requires going on a path of self-mastery to really master the practice of coherence. And all coherence is when what's happening in your mind from your beliefs and from your thoughts matches what's happening in your body, what's happening in your heart. For instance, if my belief system tells me I can, if my belief system tells me it's going to happen, and my belief system is in alignment with creating what I want to create and doing what I want to do, but in my body, in my emotions, there's a feeling like I can't have what I want, and I won't be successful, and I'll fail, and it's not likely to happen. If my mind tells me that I can, but my body tells me that I can't, then I'm not in coherence. Because coherence is when what's happening in your mind matches what's happening in your body. In my Choose Your Destiny live intensives, what I do, and in my Inner Wealth Mastermind retreats, what I do is I get somebody into a state, I get the room into a state of meditation, and I have them bring this mental construct in their minds. And what I mean by that is this picture that they have for a new reality, for their future. Also have a meditation recorded in my package called Installing Future You. I'll put the link in the show notes, and in that meditation bundle, you can access Installing Future You, and you can do this and you can see it for yourself and you can witness it. But I get people into their third eye, that area between your eyes, and I have them visualize the future that they're looking to create in the health and the wealth and the well-being and the love that they want to experience in their lives and in their world. And I have them see it, and I have them detail it and picture it, and I hold them in that space for a while, and I let that rest in their mind, and I let them rest in that visual. And after a few minutes of them resting in that visual, I have them drop down 18 inches into their heart, and I begin to have them feel the feeling of what's happening in their mind, to flood their body with joy and love and fulfillment and peace and success and wealth and prosperity, all of these feelings that we associate with this mental construct in our mind. And I have them sit there for 10, 15 minutes. And then I read the room. And if they're comfortable in 10 or 15 minutes, I leave them there longer. But not everybody at first is attuned to be able to feel the future that they want to create, because they're so used to being in a place and operating from a place of lack of coherence, incoherence. But when I see that people are in this mental state, this visualization state, and I see that they're allowing the joy and the peace and the love and the prosperity to flood their body, I leave them in that state. And being in this state for a prolonged period of time creates coherence, where your mind and your body begin to merge, and they begin to operate as one, and they begin to unify as one creative mechanism, as one creative force. Here's why this is important, is because your mind and the thoughts and the beliefs that you have are the prayers and your requests that you're sending to the universe. Your beliefs and your thoughts are the signal, the signal that goes out to the world. Think about a radio, and you set the dial to the signal that you're looking to receive. Think about your thoughts as setting the dial on the station that for us that actually grew up with stations that, and we listen to the AM FM radios, but your thoughts and your beliefs are the transmission out to what station we want to listen to. Growing up in Baltimore, it was, usually 98 Rock, 97.9 and 97.9 FM. And to listen to 98 Rock, you first had to set the dial to 97.9. And that was your request to the signal. And then from that, setting that signal, the radio would send out that frequency, and it would latch on to everything that was at that frequency, and it would transmit all of that information back to the radio, and that's what would come out of the signal or out of the speakers. And this is the equivalent. That setting the dial are your beliefs and your thoughts. That sends the signal out, the request that you're looking to make. And then that frequency out goes and gets similar frequencies, and it brings it back to the radio, the data associated with the frequencies, brings it through the receiver, the AM FM radio, and transmits it through the speakers. And this is the process of manifestation. This is the law of attraction. Your mind, your beliefs, and your thoughts, what's happening in your mind and in the Marine Corps, we call it our brain housing group. What's happening in your mind is the signal and the expression, the request, the prayer to the universe. And when it goes out, the magnet, the emotion, what's happening in your body is the receiver of that signal. And when you receive it, that's what starts to show up in your life. It's when your mind and your emotions are linked, are harmonized. But if you're sending out the signal of I can, but your body is receiving the signal of I can't, then you can't. And this is what happens when you're trying to get 98 Rock, which is 97.9, but maybe the dial is set to 98.1, or maybe it's set to 97.5, and you might hear a little bit of the sounds, a little bit of the music, but you hear a lot of static. And you can't quite hear the song that you're looking to hear. You can't quite hear the station because the dial is set off just a little bit. You're making the request, but you're not able to fully tap into the signal of receiving that request. And it's fuzzy. And this is the process of coherence. It's tuning that dial to what we want, lighting our body up with the emotion of already having it and receiving it, and allowing that prayer out and that receiving receptive mode in our body to pull forth the data that's going to show up in the world as a manifestation and a materialization of the thoughts and the prayers that we had. Thoughts and the beliefs that it's already ours. Now, whether your thoughts say you can't have it, if your beliefs and your thoughts say you can't have it, of course you can't. That's coming from a place of incoherence. But if your thoughts say you can, and your body says you can't, you can't. If your thoughts say you can't, but your body says you can, then you can. In whatever capacity that looks like. When your brain, or you can't, I take that back. When your brain, your mind, and your body are unified in the message that it's sending and receiving, that's when you will manifest what you want in this lifetime. And this is called coherence. And once you see this coherence played out in the world, once you see how powerful you are when you practice self-mastery in practicing tuning what's happening in your mind and amplifying the emotions in your body of what's happening in your mind, once you harvest that, once you master that, once you embrace that, you can see that you can point your mind wherever you want, you point your body wherever you want, and then it will tune in to the materialization of that new circumstance, of that new object, you will enter into the receptive mode, and you will have the object of your mind and your beliefs. And this is how we realize how powerful we truly are. And it requires the creation process, as I've outlined on this podcast numerous times, of getting really, really clear about what you want that's in your mind, of becoming certain in our body that we can have it and that it's already ours. That's certainty. And it's remaining patient in the process while it shows up. And it requires some inspired action. But in that point, when there's coherence between your thoughts and your emotions, the inspired action is going to be just that. It's going to be inspired. It's going to be joyful. It's more about receiving than it is about the desperate act of creation. And I made a post this morning on Facebook, and I said, we are not here to prove how powerful we are. We are here to remember how powerful we are. But it requires self-mastery. It requires mastering our inner world. It requires going into our mind and our belief system and our thoughts. It requires going into our body to feel what's already there and reshape them to tune themselves to the frequency of what we want instead of what we don't want. And that's exactly what self-mastery is. It's a retunement, and it's a refinement of the signal that we're sending. Now, I've had a couple training sessions over the last couple weeks, and at the beginning of the training session, I show some aura photos that Angie and I took from in Sedona, Arizona. In fact, I show aura photos from Angie, from my wife Angie, from me, and from my homie Brian Schroeder. He's been on this podcast multiple times, and I show these three auras, and I say, you can look at them. Angie's is fiery red. Mine is a blend of lots of blues and lots of purples, more spiritual stuff, but some red, some white, some yellow, a little more fire. And Brian's, it is all blue right now. His current aura 5 years ago was all red, but right now, if you look at his aura photo, it's all blue because he is in this beautiful spiritual space full of fulfillment and harmony and inner fulfillment and inner freedom. And when you're around Angie, if you're ever around Angie, you can feel the fire that's coming out of her body and her energy. And when you're around me, you can feel the mix. You can feel the intensity, but you can still feel the peace. You can feel the fulfillment. You can feel the joy. And when you're around Brian, you feel a deep sense of peace and relaxation because people feel you before you even say a word. People feel you. They tap into your aura. They tap into your energy more or before you even say a word. And they feel you. And this is why some people feel really good to be around, where you lock auras, and some people don't feel good around, where you're actually like in a resistant state of each other's auras. And all that aura is what's happening in your mind and your body. And in that aura, it's basically demonstrating through your energy. It's the signal of coherence or lack of coherence. And the universe responds to that level of coherence. And for a coherent being, it's going to attract into it the frequency of that coherence. For an incoherent being, someone whose mind is battling their body, mind is battling their heart, thoughts are battling their emotions, then it's going to attract the signal or the frequency of that incoherence. And this is why sometimes people say they want something, but they get something different. It's because they're incoherent in their mind and their body, but they're attracting the frequency of the incoherence. So of course they're not getting what they want. Listen, when you go inside and when you start the path of self-mastery and you finally go inside to see what's raging in your mind and what's happening in your body, you'll start to see where your power, where you're either harnessing power or where you're leaking your power and you're giving up your power. And you'll see it in the thoughts and the beliefs that you have and the emotions in your body. And all emotion is energy in motion. Emotion is energy in motion. But when you start to reshape your mind and your belief system and your thoughts, and you begin to point your emotions towards what you want instead of what you don't want, you'll see that you've been powerful all along. And if you've known you're powerful up to this point, then you amplify that power. But if you haven't harnessed and you haven't recognized you're powerful, that's when you can finally start to step into your sovereignty, step into your personal authority, your personal power, and start to reshape yourself in your inner world. And when you reshape your inner world, you will naturally reshape your external world. And true power lives inside of you and not in the world. And the wealthy and successful people know, and the wealthy and successful and happy people know that their power is in them. And what's happening outside is just a reflection of them. This is why when you change who you are, everything changes. And if you change nothing about you, nothing will change. But starts with your beliefs and your thoughts. And when you change, what Dr. Wayne Dyer says, when you change the way you look at things, everything you look at changes. And that starts with taking a look and looking at your belief system, looking at your thoughts, and seeing what's happening in your heart of hearts. And if you think you can believe it, and if you feel you can believe it, you will create it. But if you're not living the life of your dreams right now, if you're not living a materially abundant life, if you're not living a prosperous life, if you don't have margin in your life, there's some incongruencies that's in your mind and body, and you got to go in there and find it. Because when you master yourself, you will finally master all of your circumstances.